one of the things that all stringed instruments share is redundancy, which is the phenomenon of the same note occurring in different places on the neck. Now, because of the range on the stick, we have even more redundancy than than your common guitar, bass, cello, violin, that kind of thing. One of my absolute favorite parts of this instrument is a concept that I call range crossing, where you find notes that are either redundant or within a redundant range between the two sides. And it lends itself to, in my opinion, a very, I don't know, somewhere between a harp and a classical guitar and a little bit of piano. You know, you can get chords that you wouldn't be able to reach on a guitar, just physically impossible, but with the sound of like a classical guitar or something like that. And so, with that, this is a piece that I wrote to tackle range crossing and the sustain technique on the stick, which is really just choosing, being very particular about when you let go of the strings.
By how much pressure you put when
Yep.
you tap it?
Yep.
It's just all how you hit it.
Mm-hmm. It's all touch. Yeah, I remember. I play a lot of rock and metal with this thing, and I don't know if you were here when I mentioned, but I was actually here 2 years ago with my rock band, Geff. And it's two of these and drums playing weird instrumental jazz metal. And I remember being at a show and setting up, and this guy who had never seen one before was like, "Oh, what the heck is that thing?"
Yeah, right.
And we were talking about it, and he said something like, "Wouldn't that be so much harder than just like plucking and playing?" It's like, no, man, you just point to a note and it plays itself.
Bob right.
Yep. So that's the guitar and the bass aspect and the range crossing aspect of the instrument. It also, I think that there is a huge crossover with piano that I think is maybe a little bit less obvious at first glance with the instrument. A lot of the arrangements that I make and a lot of the work that I'm doing online and for the stick community, I'm just taking stuff out of beginner and intermediate piano books. If I'm looking for I need a beginner piece for my newer students, my fresher students this month, or I need something intermediate to give everybody a challenge. I just crack open an old college textbook of mine, or I just bought a couple of books on beginning and intermediate classical pieces on piano, and it translates very nicely. And one of the styles of piano and keyboard music that has translated to many instruments as both teaching and performing is Baroque music. And I think that's just as apt on the stick as it is with any other instrument. This is Georg Philipp Telemann's Gigue in G major. Excuse me. Oops. Oh my goodness. That's very embarrassing. I'm sorry. That's actually the one that I worked the most on. To be completely honest with you, and that's of course how it goes. I'm going to take that last section one more time and see if I can nail it. Oh my gosh, my nerves. Excuse me, I'm not usually a solo performer. I have to let you know. I am not usually a solo performer. I usually play with a band. I haven't played solo since probably college or high school. But I do intend to...
We're not putting you on the spot, though.
I know, and I appreciate that. But I'm kind of putting myself on the spot, you know. But as long as, I just want to get that out. Hopefully,
That's right.
I find that talking about the nerves tends to
The
help.
interesting thing is, when you were doing that piano, your hands almost moved as they would have on the piano.
Oh yeah, that's very true. Oh, I would love to. That's a great observation. So, obviously there are. One thing that you find in guitar that's been talked to death is called the caged system. And that's basically the common octave shapes that you'll find in a guitar. Stick has the exact same thing. There, it's got like 7th fret, like that. One thing that the stick does a little bit differently, all of the shapes are the same on the bass side as well. One thing the stick does a little bit differently, though, is you'll notice that unlike a guitar that has dots every other fret, this has dots every 5 frets. And that is, for those of us that are versed in music theory, that's a 4th. And it divides the stick very nicely up into quadrants. And what these quadrants do is, one, they're very helpful for sheet music because taking a note from classical guitar, when you are to play on a certain fret or a note in a certain location on classical guitar, it gives you a Roman numeral, and that indicates the position. Position being the lowest fret that your first finger is going to play. Right. In stick, because of the tuning and because of the quadrants, one note in one pitch only occurs in one quadrant, in one space. So, if I wanted to indicate, I'm going to play A2 in the first quadrant, it has to be here. Oops, it has to be here. This is the only A2 in one quadrant, or in quadrant 1. And so, when you're reading sheet music for the thing, you just read through it, and then, if there's any composer's notes about fingering or anything like that, it's nice and easy to just place a Roman numeral for the quadrant to tell you where to play the note. What it also does is that it means that every shape within one octave is identical in every quadrant. This shape, the minor pentatonic, is the same here as it is here. That these are going to be the exact same notes. On the bass side, because of the fifths tuning, the only difference is that the quadrants now indicate octaves rather than unisons. Like that. And it comes in great handy for when you're improvising, when you're writing, when you're learning music, all that kind of thing. It is in my opinion, an extremely efficient instrument to learn because it's, you know, so many instruments are very geometric, so many stringed instruments in particular are very geometrically based. You know, you're always told, okay, you know, learn your scale shapes, learn your chord shapes, all that kind of thing. And with 10 strings, 12 strings, that can be a really intimidating process. But when you reduce it down to a quadrant system like that, it's a lot simpler, a lot easier. Hopefully, I'll be able to nail this because I believe this deals a little bit with the quadrant system. Hopefully this is a tune that some of you will recognize.
Not exactly twinkle-toed ballerinas in that.
Yeah, of course that one is so much more difficult than the one previous to it, and I get through that just fine.
Is that your own arrangement of that?
That is, yes.
Yeah.